A new era in the stars. The silence of deep space was broken only by the rhythmic hum of the Horizon's Edge flagship's engines as it cut through the dark expanse of the unknown. For Commander Nathaniel Rhodes, it was a moment of quiet reflection, a rare gift amidst the chaotic preparations of their ambitious mission. The MothYard, a monumental creation of human engineering, loomed just behind them, its massive fleet, a symbol of human ambition and strength. They had spent years constructing this fleet, gathering every resource, every ounce of human ingenuity, to embark on this journey. The fleet was humanity's first true foray into the vast, uncharted corners of the galaxy. It was not just a military venture, nor merely a scientific expedition. It was a message. Humanity was no longer a species bound to a single planet. They were ready to stake their claim among the stars. But what would they find out there? Nathaniel stood at the command deck, his eyes scanning the star-filled expanse outside. The ships in the MothYard were designed for both exploration and defense. Some were research vessels, others heavy cruisers, and a few were even equipped for rapid response and conflict resolution. But no matter their design, they all shared one common purpose: to ensure humanity's survival and growth in a galaxy that was likely filled with species both older and more advanced. The Horizon's Edge was nearing its destination, an uncharted system that had shown faint signs of an alien civilization. The star at the center of the system was a blazing ball of heat and light, but what caught the crew's attention was the massive, mysterious object orbiting one of its moons. It wasn't a natural formation. Whatever it was man-made or alien-made. "We're approaching the target system," the communications officer, Lieutenant Kara Simmons, announced. Her voice echoed through the command deck. Nathaniel nodded. The journey had been long, and the unknown stretched ahead like an endless horizon. But there was no turning back. Humanity's place in the stars depended on the courage they would show in the face of the unknown. "Prepare all systems for scan mode," Nathaniel ordered, his voice steady despite the anticipation building inside him. "We need to know what we're dealing with before making contact." The officers at their consoles worked quickly, engaging the fleet's advanced sensors and scanning equipment. Every ship in the fleet had its role, from the smallest reconnaissance drones to the massive dreadnoughts prepared for worst-case scenarios. But in this first encounter, the key was to be diplomacy, not warfare. Nathaniel hoped the stars held no enemies, only allies waiting to be discovered. The vastness of space pressed against the ship's hull, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. Nathaniel turned his gaze to the star system, the unknown looming large in front of him. What would they find when they finally reached the mysterious object orbiting the moon? An ancient civilization, an advanced technology, or perhaps something even stranger. Whatever it was, Nathaniel knew that the fate of humanity rested on their ability to adapt, to think beyond their instincts, and to lead with both courage and wisdom. Suddenly, the image of the object on the holo-display shifted, growing clearer as the ship approached. The object wasn't just a stationary station or structure. It was something more. Large, angular, and covered in strange markings, it seemed almost alive, pulsating with energy. Something about it felt alien. It was far more complex than any human-made structure, suggesting a civilization far older than theirs. The first officer, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes, leaned over to Nathaniel's side, his voice low and urgent. "It's not just a ship, sir. It's a station. And there's something else, something inside it." Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat. His training had prepared him for many scenarios, but nothing had quite prepared him for this. A station in deep space, with no known origin, and perhaps something, or someone, inside. This was the challenge they had all been waiting for. "Prepare a boarding party," Nathaniel ordered, his voice unwavering despite the unknowns. "We'll make contact, but we'll do it carefully. No weapons unless absolutely necessary." As he gave the command, Nathaniel felt a sense of both excitement and caution. This was humanity's first step into the broader galaxy, and it could very well be a turning point for their future. But he also knew the galaxy was vast, full of dangers, mysteries, and opportunities. What they found here could shape the future of humanity, for better or for worse. As the fleet edged closer to the alien station, Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a mix of wonder and fear. The vastness of space had always been humbling, but now, the reality of it felt personal. They were no longer just explorers of their own world. They were explorers of the stars. And whatever they discovered, humanity would face it together, united, resolute, and driven by an unyielding spirit to survive and thrive. The first contact. The horizon's edge crept closer to the alien station, its massive form dwarfing even the largest ships in the fleet. As the ship moved, the air on the command deck seemed to grow heavier, charged with an electric anticipation. Every officer, every crew member aboard, was acutely aware that they were moments away from making history. The unknowns surrounding them were immense, but the one thing they knew for certain was this: they were not alone in the galaxy. Commander Nathaniel Rhodes stood at the center of the deck, his mind racing with calculations and possible outcomes. He had prepared for many scenarios, but nothing had truly prepared him for this moment. The object ahead wasn't just a station. It was something ancient, something profoundly different from anything humanity had ever encountered. Its surface shimmered with a strange metallic sheen, and the faintest pulse of energy seemed to radiate from its core, like the heartbeat of a dormant giant. "Commander," Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes said, his voice cutting through the tension, "we're within hailing range. I've got the station's surface map on the screen, but it's heavily encrypted. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. This technology, it's advanced, but not in a way we understand." Nathaniel nodded, his brow furrowed. The challenge ahead was immense. The encryption on the station's surface was unlike anything human scientists had encountered, and the way it pulsed, almost rhythmically, suggested that the station was alive in a way that defied all known logic. "We'll have to approach this cautiously," Nathaniel said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I want a team ready to board as soon as we make contact. We can't afford to make mistakes here. Not now." The bridge fell silent, the officers absorbed in their tasks as the ship's sensors continued to scan the station. It was clear now that the station wasn't just a relic. It was an active, functional structure. The readings suggested that it had been here for millennia, far older than any human civilization, but still operational in ways that were incomprehensible to the crew. The view screen flickered briefly as the horizon's edge drew closer to the station's docking bay. An unsettling quiet seemed to envelop the ship, as if the universe itself were holding its breath in anticipation. Outside, the alien structure loomed, dark and imposing. It looked almost like a city, vast, sprawling, with towering spires and bridges that connected sections of the station in a web of complex geometry. "Prepare for docking," Nathaniel ordered, his voice unwavering. "Lieutenant Simmons, send a communication signal. Let them know we're here." "Aye, Commander," she replied, her fingers flying over the controls. The communication panel lit up as she sent the signal out. The station's strange encryption system blinked in response, sending back a pulse of energy that reverberated through the horizon's edge. "What's that?" Ryan asked, looking over his shoulder at the readings. "It's a response," Simmons said, her voice laced with surprise. "It's almost like they acknowledged us. No direct message, but the energy signature is clearly a form of communication." Nathaniel's mind raced. If the station was responding to them, it meant that someone, or something, was aware of their presence. But what did that mean? Was it a welcoming gesture, or was it a challenge? As he pondered, a voice cut through the silence. "This is Captain Arrow, commanding the boarding party," came the voice over the intercom. "We're ready to enter the station, sir. Our team is prepped and standing by." Nathaniel's gaze fixed on the view screen, his hands resting on the railing before him. The moment had arrived. The unknown was no longer just an idea. It was right in front of them, waiting to be discovered. "Proceed with caution, Captain," Nathaniel said, his voice steady. "Make contact, but do not take any unnecessary risks. We need information. Don't engage unless you're certain of the situation." "Aye, Commander," Captain Arrow replied. "We'll keep you informed." With that, the docking bay doors of the Horizon's Edge opened, revealing the stark black void of space. The boarding team, clad in advanced spacesuits, slowly made their way out of the ship and into the docking tunnel leading to the alien station. Nathaniel watched through the view screen, his heart pounding as they made their way across the vacuum of space toward the unknown. Inside the station, the boarding party's sensors flickered to life. The air was thin, but breathable. The walls were smooth, metallic, and covered in faint, shifting symbols that seemed to move of their own accord. Captain Arrow and her team carefully navigated the corridor, their every step echoing in the eerie silence of the station. "Something's not right," one of the soldiers whispered, his voice reverberating in their helmets. "It feels alive, like the walls are watching us." The rest of the team remained silent, focusing on their tasks, but the sense of unease was palpable. Every time they passed a junction, a doorway, or a corner, it felt as if they were being observed by something beyond their understanding. There was a strange, almost sentient presence in the air, a feeling that this station had seen countless visitors, but had never truly allowed them to understand its purpose. At the heart of the station, the team discovered a large central chamber. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were lined with symbols, but they were not static. The markings seemed to shift, as though reacting to the presence of the humans. In the center of the room was a massive circular structure, its surface gleaming with energy. "What is it?" Captain Arrow asked, her voice filled with awe. "It's some sort of power core," one of the engineers on the team speculated. "But the way it's configured, it's nothing like our reactors. This is alien technology, beyond anything we could have imagined." As the team examined the power core, a low hum filled the air, and the entire station seemed to come alive. The walls pulsed, and the symbols began to glow with an eerie light. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language no human had ever heard. The voice was not mechanical. It was alive, and it was calling out to them. The language of the unknown. The voice echoed throughout the chamber, deep and resonant, vibrating the very air around Captain Arrow and her team. It wasn't just sound, it was a force, alive, almost as if it carried meaning in every vibration. The soldiers froze, their weapons at the ready, but there was no immediate threat. They stood in a circle, facing the strange alien structure at the heart of the station, trying to make sense of what was unfolding before them. The voice, though incomprehensible, felt intelligent. It carried a certain rhythm, like a language, but not one that anyone could easily understand. The symbols that covered the walls began to pulse in time with the voice, the glow intensifying as the resonance from the core grew louder. Captain Arrow, her heartbeat quickening, stepped forward, cautiously observing the situation. "Stay alert," she whispered into the comms, her voice tight with uncertainty. This could be some kind of automated message or a warning. One of the engineers, Lieutenant Sophia Clark, adjusted her visor and analyzed the glowing symbols on the wall. "It's not like anything I've ever seen. But these patterns, they seem to correspond to the pulse from the core. Maybe it's trying to communicate with us." Suddenly, the voice stopped, its deep reverberation vanishing, as if it had never been there. For a moment, everything fell silent, leaving only the faint hum of the station's energy core. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Something had shifted. "Are we getting any responses from the Horizon's Edge?" Captain Arrow asked, tapping her wrist console to check the communication status. Lieutenant Clark's fingers flew over her equipment. "No, Captain. The station's energy pulses are interfering with our comms. It's almost like we're being isolated." Just as she finished speaking, A soft blue light flickered across the far wall of the chamber. A series of symbols appeared, different from the ones they had seen earlier. This time, they were far clearer, structured in a more familiar form. They almost looked like a written language, though one that was impossible to decode with human knowledge. "Look at this," one of the soldiers muttered, pointing at the symbols. "It's like they're inviting us to touch it. Look at the way they're arranged. There's a pattern of movement." Captain Arrow's instincts told her to hesitate. They had no idea whether this was an invitation, a test, or a trap. But the unknown nature of the station was undeniable, and it was clear they weren't going to learn anything by standing still. She nodded toward Lieutenant Clark. "Try to interface with it," she ordered. "But don't touch anything directly unless you're sure it's safe." Clark nodded, her hands shaking slightly as she approached the wall. Using her portable translator, she tapped the symbols on her screen, trying to map the strange patterns against the information they already had. The interface beeped and whirred, struggling to decode the alien symbols. For a moment, it felt like they were just wasting time. But then, without warning, the wall lit up in a new color, an intense, pulsating violet, and a single line of symbols appeared, this time accompanied by a series of sharp, rhythmic tones. The vibrations in the room grew stronger, almost as though the entire station were waking up around them. "Captain, I think it's trying to communicate directly," Lieutenant Clark said, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "I'm picking up some kind of sequence. It's not just random noise. These tones, they correspond to specific symbols." The soldiers around her began to tense up, clearly on edge. This was uncharted territory, and they were beginning to feel the weight of it pressing down on them. Captain Arrow glanced around, weighing her options. "Do we risk making contact?" Arrow asked, her voice steady despite the fear settling into her chest. "If this is a form of communication, we need to understand it. But we don't know what could happen if we try." Sophia Clark, however, had a spark of hope in her eyes. "If we don't try, we'll never know. And this is our best shot at understanding whatever intelligence built this place." Captain Arrow took a deep breath. She had come too far to back down now. "Agreed. Prepare to make contact, but stay ready for anything." With Clark's permission, the translator began to analyze the sequence of symbols and sounds, her fingers working quickly to decipher the message. The strange, rhythmic tones continued to fill the air, each sound vibrating with a sense of urgency. The symbols on the wall shifted again, becoming more intricate, their meaning slowly becoming clearer. Then, like a spark igniting in the dark, a new set of symbols appeared. This time, they were accompanied by a voice, this time more human-sounding, although still alien. It was softer than the first, and more intelligible. "Welcome, travelers," the voice said in clear, though unfamiliar, speech. It was not mechanical, but almost sentient in its tone. "You have entered the domain of the Ashari. We have awaited your arrival." The entire team froze, their minds racing. "Ashari," Captain Arrow murmured. "Who are the Ashari?" The voice responded, its tone calm and patient. "We are the keepers of knowledge, the sentinels of the stars. You, humanity, have crossed the threshold of the unknown. But this journey comes at a cost. Your presence here will change the path of your kind forever. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" The message sent a ripple through the team. The uncertainty they had felt earlier was now amplified, but there was no turning back. This was the first moment in human history where they stood face to face with a truly ancient alien civilization. The implications were staggering, both terrifying and exhilarating. Captain Arrow swallowed hard. She felt the weight of the moment settle upon her shoulders. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and it had not gone unnoticed. "Tell us what we need to know," Arrow said, her voice strong but filled with awe. "We're ready. Humanity is ready." The voice of the Ashari echoed once more, its next words carrying a sense of both warning and invitation. "Then, prepare yourselves, For the trials ahead will test you in ways you cannot imagine. The chamber seemed to pulse in response, and the light from the symbols grew brighter, as if the station itself was aware of their readiness. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the first steps had been taken, and humanity's journey into the stars was only just beginning. The trials of the HFY. The air inside the station hummed with a strange energy, thick with anticipation. The voice of the HFY still lingered in the minds of Captain Arrow and her team. It was no longer just a distant message. They had made contact. Humanity had crossed a threshold that no one could have predicted, and now there was no turning back. Captain Arrow stood at the center of the command circle, her mind whirling with the gravity of the situation. The HFY had warned them of trials ahead, challenges that would test humanity in ways they could not even fathom. The word hung in the air like a weight, each one heavy with implication. "We need to prepare," Arrow said, her voice low but firm. "Whatever they have planned for us, we need to face it together. We don't know what we're walking into, but we can't afford to be unprepared." Lieutenant Clark, who had been closely studying the symbols on the wall, looked up from her screen. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. "Captain, I've managed to isolate a few more sequences from their language. They're providing us with some guidance on what to expect. It's fragmented, but I think I understand the gist of it." "What do you mean?" Arrow asked, moving closer to her. "There are references to something called the Forge of Souls. It's mentioned multiple times in the texts, along with the word purification. It looks like these trials are some sort of test, but not in the way we might expect. This isn't a combat trial. It's a trial of spirit and willpower." Arrow processed this information. The Forge of Souls, purification. The words had a mystical quality to them, and yet they were coming from an alien race that had already demonstrated its advanced technological prowess. The juxtaposition was unsettling. "You're saying these trials could be spiritual?" she asked. "That's the closest translation I can make, Captain," Clark replied. "I think they're testing our minds, our resolve, not just our technology or physical strength." Captain Arrow turned toward the rest of her team, who were waiting for their next orders. The weight of the situation settled more heavily on her shoulders. This wasn't a simple first contact anymore. The HFY were offering them something far more profound, a chance to prove humanity's worth in a galaxy far older and more mysterious than they had ever imagined. "All right," Arrow said, her voice steady. "We move forward. We enter their trial. But we do it with open minds. We may not understand what's ahead of us, but we will face it as one." As she spoke, the station's walls shifted once again, as if reacting to their decision. The strange symbols began to rearrange themselves, forming a path leading deeper into the station. The path was lined with shimmering lights, each one representing another step forward in their journey. "Looks like we've got our way forward," Lieutenant Clark said, her tone a mix of relief and uncertainty. The team gathered their equipment and began walking down the illuminated path. The further they went, the quieter the station became. The hum of the core grew fainter, until it was almost completely silent. The strange energy that had filled the air seemed to dissipate, leaving behind only a heavy stillness. As they turned a corner, the team found themselves in a vast, open chamber unlike any they had encountered before. The space was massive, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls stretching beyond the limits of their vision. The chamber was empty, save for a single object at its center. It was a pedestal, ancient and weathered, its surface engraved with intricate patterns and glowing softly with the same violet light that had once filled the station. Atop the pedestal was a crystal, clear and perfectly shaped, its surface pulsing with an internal light. "This is it," Captain Arrow whispered, awe in her voice. "The Forge of Souls." Lieutenant Clark stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the crystal. As her fingers brushed against its surface, a shockwave of energy rippled through the chamber. The light from the crystal flared, and the symbols on the walls of the chamber came alive, shifting and flowing like water. Suddenly, a figure materialized before them, its form fluid and constantly shifting. It was a humanoid shape, but its features were indistinct, made of shifting light and shadow. The figure spoke in a language that no one could understand, but somehow its meaning was clear. "You have reached the Forge of Souls," the figure intoned, its voice resonating with an otherworldly depth. "Only those worthy may pass. You must confront yourselves before the Azhari will share their knowledge. What you seek lies beyond, but to claim it, you must prove your worth." The chamber seemed to grow darker as the figure's words sank in. There was no mistaking it now. This was a test, and it would be unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The very essence of their beings would be laid bare. "Prepare yourselves," the figure continued. "The trials begin now." Before Captain Arrow could react, the walls of the chamber began to shift once again. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and strange symbols erupted in the air, forming a series of holographic projections. The symbols were familiar, but they twisted in strange ways, moving faster than the eye could follow. "What are we supposed to do?" Arrow asked, panic creeping into her voice. "How do we face this?" The figure responded, its voice calm but insistent. "The trial begins with understanding. The mind is the first to be tested. What do you seek in the stars? What is the true purpose of your journey?" The team exchanged nervous glances. The questions were deep, philosophical. Humanity's journey had been one of survival, of seeking knowledge, of pushing beyond the boundaries of their home planet. But could they define a purpose in such a way? I don't know," Clark said, her voice uncertain. "We seek knowledge, yes, but is that enough?" The figure's form flickered and shifted. "The truth will be revealed to those who can answer the call. Your worth will be determined by the purity of your intentions. The stars are not just a realm of conquest, they are a realm of understanding." The energy in the room began to intensify as the holographic projections shifted again. This time, they formed images of humanity's past: wars, struggles, triumphs, and failures. It was a display of their history, but it was not one they had ever seen before. "This is our trial," Arrow said, her voice firm. "To face our history, to confront who we were and who we want to be." The figure's form flickered again, and a deep voice filled the chamber. "Then face your past, humanity, and show us the future you desire." The symbols on the walls turned into faces, representations of humanity's struggles, its greatest challenges and victories. Each one seemed to look at them, as though waiting for an answer. The trial had begun. The reflection of the soul. The chamber fell into a thick, unnatural silence as the trial began. Captain Arrow stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the shifting symbols that now covered the walls. Each one seemed to burn with an unspoken challenge, a deep, almost judgmental gaze that forced her to confront the very heart of humanity's past. Around her, the crew was equally still, their faces tight with the weight of the moment. The figure in the center of the room flickered once more, its shifting shape now becoming clearer, an ethereal being, half light, half shadow, observing them like an ancient judge. Its voice resonated again, carrying an air of authority. "To understand the future," the figure spoke, "you must first confront the past. What lies behind you is the foundation of what you will become. Face the choices, the darkness, and the light. Only then will you be ready to pass the trial." Arrow's heart raced as the room seemed to shift. The images on the walls began to form scenes from humanity's history: ancient battles, great discoveries, moments of unity and division. They were moments they had all learned about in their history lessons, but now they were alive before them, tangible and raw. For Arrow, the first scene was one of her ancestors, the early explorers of space. She saw herself as a child again, listening to the tales of the pioneers who had first taken their ships beyond Earth's atmosphere. The excitement in the room that day was palpable. They were legends to her, their courage etched into every part of humanity's journey. But there was also something darker that lingered in the back of her mind: the cost of exploration. the lives lost, the sacrifices made for progress. Then the scene shifted. A new image appeared before her. A war. The Great Colonization War. A bloody conflict between human factions over resources in the outer colonies. The voices in the scene were loud and filled with anger. The soldiers clashing in the streets, desperate and broken. Arrow closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the violence in that memory. It was a chapter humanity had tried to bury, one that spoke of their darker impulses. Yet it was also the fuel that had sparked humanity's need to build, to expand, and to protect. The figure's voice cut through her thoughts, chilling in its clarity. Do you understand now? The blood, the betrayal, the price of your ambition. These are the choices that have shaped your civilization. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you allow the past to define you, or will you rise above it? The words struck deep, but Arrow stood tall. She had seen the darkness of humanity's history, but she had also seen their strength to overcome. The fight for survival, for progress, for unity, it was all part of who they were. The question now was how they would carry that forward. What kind of future would they build? I understand, Arrow said quietly, her voice resolute. We cannot escape our past, but we can shape our future. We've made mistakes, yes, but we are more than that. We are capable of change. The figure paused, its form flickering once more. Then, as if in response to Arrow's words, the wall behind her shimmered with a new image, this time of humanity in the future. Cities that stretched to the skies, space stations orbiting distant planets, a united Earth and its allies working together, not in conflict, but in harmony. The image was beautiful, breathtaking. It showed humanity as they could be, united, peaceful, and prosperous. This, the figure said, its tone softer now, is the future you must create. The unity, the vision. It is not enough to simply survive. You must strive to thrive, to protect not just your own, but to respect all that you encounter. The stars hold both wonders and dangers, but they also hold the potential for growth, for peace. Lieutenant Clark, standing by Arrow's side, spoke up, her voice quivering slightly but full of conviction. We've seen that potential. In the moments of our history when we reached out to help others, when we chose compassion over conquest, we thrived. The figure's form shifted again, the walls now depicting the human crew working alongside alien species in the future, engaging in peaceful negotiations, solving crises together, and sharing knowledge across the stars. The path forward is one of understanding, cooperation, and mutual respect. The figure intoned. But the trial is not over. You must now face what is within you, the darkness that still lurks, the fear, the pride, the urge to dominate. These are the temptations that lie in your hearts, and they will be the greatest challenges you face. Suddenly, the chamber began to change again, the calm visions of peace melting away. Instead, the room seemed to twist and distort, the floor tilting at odd angles. The peaceful projections flickered, replaced by images of human greed, war, and unchecked ambition. The people in these images were not working together. They were fighting, stealing, exploiting. This was a future where humanity's flaws ruled their path. Can you resist the temptation? The figure's voice whispered. The urge to dominate, to conquer without understanding. Can you choose the right path when power is within your grasp? The pressure in the room was palpable. The walls closed in, the floor beneath them seeming to buckle as if under the weight of humanity's own fears. Captain Arrow felt the sting of doubt, the fear of what humanity could become if they lost their way. But within her, there was also an unshakable belief in the strength of humanity to overcome these impulses. She looked around at her crew, at Clark, Hayes, and the rest. They had all come so far, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. They had faced countless challenges, but none of them had tested their character like this. We're better than this, Arrow said firmly, looking directly at the figure, her voice cutting through the tension. Humanity has made mistakes, but we are capable of more. We can do better. We will do better. The figure's light flickered and then dimmed. For a moment, everything was still. The walls, the projections, the chamber itself, all were silent, as if awaiting a response. Then, slowly, the figure's form solidified, its shape becoming clearer and more stable. "You have faced the trial of the soul," it said, "and you have answered with understanding. The path forward is yours to choose. But remember this: the greatest strength of humanity lies not in its ability to conquer, but in its ability to choose compassion, to choose unity, to rise above the darkness within." With that, the figure dissipated, leaving the chamber in silence once more. The images on the walls faded, replaced by the soft, calming glow of the central crystal. The trial was over. "We did it," Lieutenant Clark whispered, her voice full of awe. "We passed." Captain Arrow looked at her team, her heart filled with pride. This trial was not just a test of their abilities. It was a test of their humanity. And together, they had proven that the future they sought was one worth fighting for. The Ishari's trial had ended, but humanity's journey had only just begun. The heart of the Ishari. The stillness in the chamber was almost suffocating after the trial had concluded. The eerie energy that once filled the air now receded, leaving only the soft hum of the station's chord in the distance. Captain Arrow stood silently, her eyes scanning the now quiet room. The reflections of humanity's past had come to life, and the weight of the trial was still heavy in her mind. She could feel the challenge of it lingering, but something had shifted within her, a sense of clarity, of purpose. Humanity's journey had always been about pushing boundaries, but now it was clear that their true test was not one of conquest, but of wisdom. "We passed," Lieutenant Clark repeated, more to herself than anyone else, her voice filled with disbelief. The calmness of her tone made Arrow realize how much the trial had affected her, too. For someone like Clark, who had always been rooted in scientific exploration, the trial had been a confrontation not just with their history, but with their very essence as a species. Arrow nodded slowly. "We didn't just pass. We learned something. About ourselves. About what it means to be human." The glowing crystal in the center of the chamber flickered again, drawing their attention. The soft, pulsating light it emitted seemed to be beckoning them forward, its message now clear. It was no longer just an object. It was a symbol of humanity's growth, of the path ahead, and of the knowledge waiting to be unlocked. The Ishari had offered them the trials, but now, the true understanding was within their grasp. "We should approach it," Arrow said, taking a step forward. "Let's see what happens next." Lieutenant Clark followed, her hand lightly brushing the side of her console. "I've been analyzing the energy readings. The crystal, it's more than just a symbol. It's a conduit, a sort of interface. The Ishari are guiding us, offering us something. But what exactly?" The rest of the team followed in silence, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. The closer they got to the crystal, the more intense the light became, until it was almost blinding. But there was something oddly comforting about it, as though it was alive, aware of their presence. The air felt charged, as if every breath they took was steeped in anticipation. Just as they reached the pedestal, the crystal flared brightly, and a new voice filled the chamber. This time, it was not the ethereal tone of the figure they had faced, but something more personal, direct. "You have passed the trial," the voice said, deep and resonant. "But now you stand at the threshold of knowledge. The Ishari do not give knowledge freely. We do not give it to those who seek to use it for their own gain. You must prove that you are worthy, that you will use what we offer for the betterment of all." The voice paused, and for a moment, there was a stillness that seemed to stretch on forever. "You stand here, at the crossroads of your destiny. Will you choose the path of wisdom, of unity and peace, or will you choose the path of domination, of power and control? The decision is yours, humanity. The next step is yours to take." Captain Arrow glanced at her team. The message was clear. This was no longer just a test of humanity's past. It was a test of their future. The Ashari were offering them something beyond their wildest imagination, but it came with an immense responsibility. What could they possibly offer in return? What would they do with this knowledge? "We've come this far," Arrow said quietly. "We've learned the lessons of our history, and we've learned that our future isn't just about survival. It's about choosing a better path, a path of cooperation, not conquest." Lieutenant Clark stepped forward, her hand reaching toward the crystal. "I agree. We have the potential to change the future, to build a better world for ourselves and for others we meet out there in the stars. We must prove we're worthy of the trust the Ashari have placed in us." As Clark's fingers brushed the surface of the crystal, the light pulsed once more, a warm, welcoming glow that seemed to envelop them. The symbols on the walls began to shift again, this time forming an intricate map, a series of coordinates and pathways leading to distant corners of the galaxy. It was a map of knowledge, new systems, new possibilities, new frontiers to explore. The crystal's voice filled the chamber again, this time softer, almost approving. "Humanity has chosen wisely. You seek peace, unity, and understanding. You have shown the wisdom to learn from your past and the strength to shape your future. The Ashari will offer you the knowledge you seek. The stars are now open to you." With a deep, resonant hum, the crystal dissolved into light, and the symbols on the walls faded. The chamber was now still, but the team could feel the weight of the decision they had just made, and the magnitude of what lay ahead. The map displayed before them was only the beginning. The Ashari had entrusted them with knowledge, but it was up to humanity to use it wisely. Captain Arrow stepped forward, her voice filled with newfound resolve. "The path is clear. The Ashari have shown us the way, but it is up to us to walk it together." The team nodded, each of them feeling the weight of their newfound purpose. The universe was vast, filled with mysteries and dangers, but now humanity had the opportunity to shape its future, not just through technology or power, but through wisdom and unity. The trials of the Ashari were only the first step on a journey that would define the future of their species. "Let's return to the horizon's edge," Arrow said, her voice steady with determination. "We have much to prepare for. The galaxy is waiting." As they made their way back to the docking bay, the station seemed to pulse with life one last time. It was as if the Ashari were watching them, observing their every step. Humanity had passed the trial, but the true challenge was only just beginning. The stars, once distant and unknowable, now beckoned with new possibilities. And humanity, with all its strength, curiosity, and wisdom, was ready to answer the call.